Hi, everyone. Welcome back to A Tribe Called Dhillon podcast. It's our channel. I'm Angie Dhillon.
And I'm Rose Dhillon.
And I'm Alvin Dhillon.
And today is a very special episode. It's Father's Day today. So on behalf of my siblings and I, we want to wish all the dads and all the father figures out there a very happy Father's Day. And if I can get you to hit subscribe, share, like, follow us, just want to thank you all for all your support. Our digital family is growing and we are so appreciative for your support. And with that said, we are going to get into our Win of the Week segment. Please think about your Win of the Week segment. I'm going to just admit, I feel like I'm a little rocky right now. We have actually been doing some remote interviews. I'm not going to lie. I kind of like that vibe. And so we're back in the studio today and it feels like my first day of kindergarten, getting back used to being in front of the camera like this way with all of us, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the remote interviews, some of those remote interviews, we're going to be airing them shortly. But what do you guys think about those remote interviews?
For me, I loved it because from an IT point, it was so easy, very streamlined. It was a lot of just send the link, click, record, and that's it. It was easy for me, so I enjoyed it. But it was also cool because now you're getting to meet other cool people and we get to do it from our computer.
Yeah.
So I love technology because if it wasn't for technology, we wouldn't be able to interview people who live in Greece, live in LA. Like it's so amazing to get to experience this way in England, right? Bobby's in England. Yeah.
And you guys want to know something? It's the whole podcasting market really took off after the pandemic.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, if 2020, if we did not have COVID and the pandemic, I don't know what the landscape of podcasting would be because a lot of organizations had to start implementing these types of remote applications and tools so people could connect and interview. So sometimes, we always say that we don't like change. And I always like to say when something negative happens, at the end of it, the light usually comes out. And I think that was the light. That benefited everybody in the long run. Unfortunately, it was an unfortunate situation, but something good came out of it.
And something really funny is I always turn my camera on at work meetings. I'm the only one who does. And sometimes people are like, why do you always have your camera on? And I'm like, oh yes, because I'm so used to doing this that we tape in front of a camera. I'm comfortable being in front of a camera. Not everyone is comfortable in front of a camera.
Yeah. I just think it's rude when you go into a meeting with, especially if it's a meeting with a small group of people and no one turns on their camera and they're new employees.
No one turns it on in my work. They just all stopped. I'm the only one who's always got my camera on. And then eventually by 30-minute mark, they just break me down. And I was like, all right, just turn it off now.
My webcam at work is pretty good. I've mastered how to angle it where it makes me look good. But I'm not going to lie. When I looked at the segment with Bobby, I was like, oh, damn, I look really puffy. That's a bad angle. And because once again, now I'm learning to understand how to angle the webcam, what position to put it in. And when we are doing those remote interviews, I don't have my tech support Al on site. Like he's off site. So I'm not going to lie, before so many of these remote interviews, as I'm about to start, my webcam fell on me. My lights would fall on me. I was like, and it just kind of rattles you up a little bit. And I just think, you know what? This is what we are. We're in the business of hope and positivity. I got to pick myself up and like Taylor Swift says, shake it off. And the show must go on. But I was just thinking that I have to learn now when I do remote interviews, the web placement, my lighting, because I have shadows and I always look back afterwards. I'm like, damn, like I need an in-house support. I wish Al was here.
I know. I love that last episode we taped. She was yelling at Al and I remotely, like everything fell. And we're like, that's a you problem.
And I was so happy that I was not there on site. I just said,
it doesn't matter. Like we will come and sit down. I sat down 20 minutes before. I was like in my Zen, namaste. Like I got this. These are like, why is your head cut off? Why does this look like this? And I'm thinking that my set looks really good. And anyhow, that's just the way that it goes. Let's get into our Win of the Week segment so we can get into our Father's Day episode. Rose, over to you.
All right. So my win is about a week ago. Well, I've been bugging begging my brother Alvin. Alvin is very busy. He's got a day job. He's the project manager of what are they doing? You're reconstructing your home. Renovations. He's the editor of the podcast. And I was like, hey, I really need to get my desk changed. My desk is falling apart. I can't. It's been through 4 moves. I need a new desk. And I wanted a desk that where you can stand up and then you can bring it back down whenever you want.
Oh, the sit and stand desk?
So Al went on Amazon, ordered it for me, shipped to my house. And I was like, is there any way I could like beg you to come on Sunday to please put this up? And he did. My brother came last Sunday and he put up the desk, and then he set up all of my displays. I've got 2 monitors. He set everything up with the camera. All of it was done while I was sitting downstairs watching Vanderpump Rules. Wow. And then he came downstairs like, what's next? I'm like, my Roku's not working. And so then Al fixed my Roku. He set that up for me. And then he's like, all right, I'm almost done. Last one. What else do you have? I'm like, I bought a table and chair to sit outside and start working. Can you? And then he put my table and chair together, and now I get to sit outside when the days are really nice and do my work. So, ladies, I know we always like, we don't need anybody to help. Yes, we do, ladies. Sometimes you need to ask for help, and I'm so grateful that I have a lovely brother who comes and fixes stuff for me and sets things up for me. So, thank you, Al.
Yeah, that's a big ups to you, Al.
Yep.
Did you do a reward system? Because I find that our brother, Don't Tell Him, works really well on a reward system. Like if you make him a meal or if you do something like a reward system.
Well,
My new reward system is called "Leave Me the Fuck Alone." Let me be. You wanna reward me some food? Make it for me. Give it to me, and then leave. Let me enjoy it by myself. People always say that, they don't like being alone in their own thoughts and they don't like to be alone. Well, recently I found that I enjoy being alone. Sometimes you need a disconnect from everybody else. You don't need to always be in touch with everybody. It's okay to just let yourself be and be alone and sit with yourself for a bit.
Yeah.
Good for you. Is that going to be your win?
No, actually, I should use that as my win now.
That's a good one because not a lot of people enjoy their own company.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I was, when I saw myself. Like and I was like, who doesn't want to be by themselves? I was like, you want to be always surrounded by just chirping everywhere. And it's not like just at home. It's when you go to work. As soon as you step into work, usually anyone in any position is always a point of contact for some information. So you're always having like 20, 30 people coming at you for information. And then you come home and you got another 5 people coming at you for information. And then you have your podcast and you have all this. And you're like, oh, I see why people need to disconnect sometimes.
Yep.
Or those people that want to go into like the wilderness and just like disappear for a week. I'm like, I would do that, but I wouldn't survive in the wilderness. I'd probably fall asleep and wake up like a bear's like eating me.
All right.
Yep.
All right, Angela.
Okay. So that was Al's mumbo jumbo win in there.
Yep.
Mine is a cool one. A couple weeks ago at work, we did so I've done the insights where it's a personality test. And now we did a new test, which is called the DISC personality test.
Oh, I did that.
Not sure. I really highly encourage everyone.
Yep.
I think there is an online fee if you want to take it, but it's so interesting to learn where you fall into the category. There's 4 quadrants there. I won't get into the details, but I was super excited to get my card, and it's proof. Proof is in the pudding that I am a communicator. So I'm excited that I am doing
the work. You need a test to tell you that?
No, but I mean, it just validates, right?
Yeah.
The test just further validates that you are in the right path. And I'm super happy because now it's more encouragement for my soul. So I'm a peacock. You can look up what the peacock means, but it does say that I'm a communicator, and it gives you a list of things on here that are some of your key characteristics and your strengths. And I have to agree, I am emotional, but I mean, not too emotional, but I do get emotional. I'm people oriented. I like to be in the moment. I'm optimistic. I'm encouraging, and I'm persuasive.
You are all those things.
So very cool. So check it out, everyone. It's a DISC personality test if you ever want to know where you fall into, and it helps your leadership style.
You said DISC? What is that?
Yeah.
DISC. That's a great question.
Oh, it's a great. Andrew, why don't you Google that right now? Because it has it's the D and the I and the SC. I did it right when I started my organization. She made me do it and every 2 years we have to do it. And it's fun to see how you evolve.
Yeah,
and
here
how you
we go.
change.
I have it on here.
Yeah.
So it's called the DISC assessment. Right. And there's 4 quadrants. So let me see what it actually stands for here. It doesn't really say people with DISC personality here. It just says here. Okay, so here we go. So this is what it says. The DISC model describes 4 main styles. So it's DISC, D-I-S-C. So D is for dominance, I is for influence, S is for steadiness, and C is for conscientiousness. And I was actually an I, which is influence.
That was too.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into today's episode. It is Father's Day today, and as you may have noticed, we did a Mother's Day segment, of course, naturally for Mother's Day, and it's only, I guess, how should we say? It's only fair, yes. It is only fair that we do a Father's Day tribute to our dad. When I was creating the questions for this, I was really, really excited about this because we get to talk about our parents, and it allows you, our listeners, to connect and think about your parents and the influence and the impact that they've had on your upbringing. So we're super excited to share, a little bit into our father and his parenting style, so you can understand where the three of us come from. So with that said, I want to get into a really positive question here. I want to ask you, Al, what is your favorite childhood memory of dad?
That's a good one. There's probably a bunch of them, but I remember when we were younger, I guess when the parents had bought their business and it was at a good time. It was, they were having a good few years. And one thing I'd say is that Dad didn't cheap out in the sense of taking us on vacation or seeing the world. That's when I felt like I saw the most of the world when I was the most little. Yeah. And then there was a big break in between. But I remember the time when they took us to Las Vegas. Yeah. We all took road trips to go see all the family. And I think those were like the formative years of why we formed such a strong bond with our cousins, because we spent a lot of time, like especially my cousin Avneil, because we were kind of very similar in age. And whenever we used to take road trips, it was always like be me and him were like glued together. But they would take us out, and then Dad got me on thinking a little bit like almost like the business sense of where he'd be like, okay, I'm going to give you an allowance. It was $5 a week. And back then that was pretty decent money, because if you save up for a couple of months, it's a lot of money. And then he would say, okay, well, if you want other stuff, then you have to save up because you're getting your allowance. I'm not going to buy you everything that you want. You have to save up, and kind of got me into thinking like, okay, well, I can't always have what I want, but I got some money, so let it save up and then I can buy what I want with my own money. Little things like that. But there's so many memories that's just one of them.
That's a good one, because you do have to understand the value of money, the value of a dollar, and how to money manage. Yeah. Okay, good. Rose, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say I have two memories that really kind of stand out. The first is when I was in school, when we just moved to Surrey, I think they had a soccer program, and I had thought about like entering in it. And then I talked to Dad, and Dad was very much like, yeah. And I think at that time you were like just born. So it was like, oh, she's going to be my boy for now. So Dad was like, yeah. And he would take me to my practices. And then I remember one game I scored a goal, and Dad was so happy. He was so excited. And I was like, whoa, this is what it feels like when you like score a goal and your parents are like super excited and happy for you.
Proud for you.
Proud of you. That was my first goal, just seeing how excited he was, like, oh, my daughter can play sports. And then the second one was like, we should travel. I remember when we used to go to the flea market in LA all the time. You remember that?
San Jose.
And I'll never forget this. Dad gave me a $50 bill. Okay. That was a big deal. I mean, I was 12 years old. This is back in the 90s. And I remember like, oh, and he's like, yeah, I'm giving you something generous, but you have to make this stretch this all weekend, because we were going there every day. I remember Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you take this $50 and you got to make it stretch for the end of the weekend. That's the only thing you get. But it was such a valuable lesson that I didn't realize that I had learned about like the power of money and the power of like, how can I stretch this $50 and get as much as I can get out of it? Because that's all I get for the weekend. And so I think that's one of my really great ones. Just remember seeing that I'd never gotten a red bill. You always saw him with a red bill and a brown bill, and we get the blue bill, $5 bill. We never got the red bill and the brown bill. So I got the red bill. I was like, damn, I'm getting the red bill.
That's awesome. Yeah. You both are just creating nostalgia on set right now. Because I had a favorite memory of mine, but I'll come back to, but I am going to pivot to, I do also recall some of my favorite childhood memories were when we would do a road trip to go visit our cousins in Los Angeles. Yeah. And now they're all older. They all have children. And I think we need to recreate that. But the famous things that we used to do would be, I love those flea markets. Mom would go stock up on the blankets. Yep. Dad would go find trinkets and digital gadgets. Yep. And yes, I remember Dad would also give us an allowance. And I think now, we've just discovered something. That's how we learn to stretch our dollar rolls. Because I know today, a lot of times when you give someone $100, they'll go buy one item and, that's it. I will take that 100, or Rose and I will take that $100. We'll stretch it into 5-6 things. Yep. And we're like, man, look at all the things things that we purchased for $100. So
Yep.
I do recall that. And I also have another strong memory right now. If I close my eyes, and I want to say, my parents were brave for doing this, but also what the heck were they thinking, taking 3 kids in a caravan all the way to Tijuana,
Yeah.
crossing the Mexican border where we could have gotten robbed and killed for a bunch of leather goods and Tijuana blankets.
Yep.
Yeah, some good times. Good times.
times.
I remember those things. Those road trips were amazing. And we had a grandma there that used to feed us well. And I remember there was a dog. I think one of my uncles had a dog named, I think it was Tico or Tiku. Love that dog. That was our love affair with pets that started. But the one fond memory that I have of Dad in my childhood memory, and maybe it's more in my teenage years, is I played a lot of sports. I played basketball. I played soccer, but I just predominantly like basketball a lot more. And I think I did really good in grades. And so my dad used to tell me that we used to have these competitions like 21, 3-on-3. And Dad used to tell me this visualization technique. And he would say, close your eyes, picture yourself at each corners of the court, each corners of near the basketball court, and picture yourself landing in every shot. And that was the first time that I started to understand the power of your mind. And so that is what I learned from Dad, is that the art of the law of attraction. Yeah. And at that time, I didn't know these words, law of attraction, visualization. It was just close your eyes, picture yourself getting every shot in. And that memory is still vivid because I did go on to win a lot of basketball championships. I can still kick people's ass wearing high heels and score, and get some baskets in. But Dad influenced me to, that's where I think the dreamer in me came to be, because I think my father is a dreamer.
Yeah.
And that's where that's ignited something really cool in me.
100%.
Now let's talk about, I know that this is a Father's Day episode and I do want to stick to fatherly content, but I want to say, let's talk about our parents' parenting style a little bit, because both Mom and Dad, man, they had very different parenting styles. Mm-hmm. What do you remember about Dad's, Al?
Dad, keep in mind though, the parenting I got was completely different than the parenting you two got.
Yeah.
Yep.
The parenting for me was, Dad was a little bit strict, but also pretty open. But I also think he realized as I got older, he didn't have too much control over me anymore, because I spent so much time across the street at my grandparents' house. Right. And I was smart enough at a young age to realize that as a boy in an Indian family, I'm really the one calling the shots. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I used to realize oh man, these guys like I can do whatever I want. Obviously, I didn't push it, but I knew that if I did something bad, I'll just run to my grandparents, and then what's going to happen? So for me, I'm not going to lie, it was from a spoiled little boy's point of view, I can't complain. I got pretty much whatever I wanted, but I didn't push it to the limit. I wasn't doing crazy things that Dad would say, I need to hit you or I need to discipline you all the time. It was kind of I knew where the boundaries were, and I just stayed just below it. Yep. Just below it.
Okay, good to know, Rose.
Yeah. Say the question again, Ange.
Let's talk about Dad's parenting style. What do you remember?
I would say, obviously Dad was strict in some aspects, but also he understood, because I think he moved here before Mom and he went to school, that he understood that kids need to have friends. They need to go out and socialize. Mm-hmm. So Dad was always the one who would let us go to our school events on Thursday nights or Friday. I mean, Mom would just want to cage us up and lock us in the house and keep us. But Dad would always be the one to say you can't keep the kids in the house. You got to let them go out and make friends and socialize with their friends. So I'm really grateful for that, because I very quickly learned how to manipulate my mother through that tactic. I would call Dad and be like, Dad, I really want to go to the school carnival. It's a school dance. You don't tell your Indian parents there it's a dance. And he's like, it's fine from my side, but you got to convince your mom. And I would call Mom and say, Mom, Dad said it's okay for me to go, but he just wants to make sure that you're okay before he says it's okay. Oh, Dad already said yes? Yeah, Dad already. So I would play them back with each other. Wow,
you did the whole good cop, bad cop thing.
All the time. I didn't want to, but Mom would put me in that position where I had to do that, because I would always be missing out on stuff with friends. We missed out a lot of stuff.
We really
missed out a lot of stuff. I mean, we were grateful because we had cousins and we were always spending time with them. But that's something that I really appreciate, was that Dad understood that you just can't lock your kids in the house. You got to let them have some freedom.
Well, at least they couldn't lock you two, but they tried to lock me.
Yeah.
I was locked up, caged up for a while.
Yeah.
They were very strict with me. And I think it's rightfully so when you have first child, you know, you want to protect them.
They're immigrants in this country.
But I do know that dad was a little softer where he did give me leeways, but my curfews were terrible. Like the parties would start at 9 o'clock. Parties would usually start around 10 and I'd have to be home at 9. Are you serious? Like, you know, and then it came to a point where I just gave up. I was like, okay, there's no point even asking to go. So for me, I missed out on a lot of things, but I don't have any regrets because I spent a lot of times reading books. I was actually spent a lot of time in my own company. So I think now when people don't like to enjoy, when they don't enjoy their own company, I'm like, listen, I spent a lot of time in solitude. I'm good. So for me, dad was pretty strict with me. Let's go into here. So I want to ask this question here. This is an important question because we know that being a parent is one of the hardest jobs. One day, I'm sure you two will get there. I'm pretty old, getting up there in age, so it's done. I think my eggs are like done now, but I can't wait to see, you know, how you guys are going to incorporate what mom and dad have taught us into your children. But how has dad influenced your life or shaped who you are today?
That's a good question. I would say definitely there's a lot of things whenever especially the formative years, like dad, I always thought when I was growing up, like dad was the smartest person I ever knew. Because every time I asked him a question, he always had the answers to everything. And I'd be like, oh, there's nothing else I can think of that he can't answer. And he is generally always right. Like the answers are always correct because dad was educated. So he had like more of a bigger vision. But I think one of the biggest things that dad used to remind me all the time was, be a man of your word. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. Because there would be times where I would say like, oh, I'm going to go help this person or I'm going to go meet someone. And you know, when last minute you're getting lazy and you're like, no, I don't think I'm going to go. I probably won't go. And dad would say, well, no, that person was expecting you. You're supposed to do something for them or go hang out with them. They're expecting you to be there. That's not right. That you gave your word and then you back away from it. It's like, that's not a real man. A real man gives his word and his word is bond. He would always give examples of how his dad were, if he had to borrow money from somebody, they always knew that if he borrowed money, he would always pay it back with interest. And there was never an issue of like he owed anybody any money. So dad said, if you ever do anything and you give your word, he's like, you stand by your word and you don't, like, even if it means that you have to move other things around or whatever you have to do, if you've given your word, you don't back out as a real man. Unless you want to be a little bitch, then you back out.
What about you, Rose? How has dad influenced your life or shaped who you are today?
You know, I'm with Al on dad was probably one of the most smartest people I had ever met. I still think he's one of the smartest people I know today. And he was very... he always had the answers and I'd always admired dad and wanted to be more like dad than mom. Like that was something growing up. I always wanted to be like dad. Like, and as a young girl, I'm always thinking like most women always want to be like their mom. They always want to be that. I always wanted to be like dad. And then in my 20s, I kind of got lost, being a girl, being, you know, like dating and having fun and partying. And then now that I'm 40, I found my way back to being like how dad is, which is going to school, getting educated, picking up books, reading and all that. Like I always read, but I just didn't take it as seriously as I'm taking it now. So I realize now how much your childhood does shape your adulthood is that you might go off track at some point, but you find your way back to what you found the most interesting or what you connected to. And I always remember watching dad thinking he's so smart and he was always reading and he's so intelligent. I want to be like dad. Yeah.
Like that commercial, be like Michael.
Yeah.
I have to agree with both of you. I still think that my father is one of the most intelligent men on the face of this planet. He gives Dr. Shiv a run for his money as well. But I would say that growing up and still, I just admire dad. I think he's a wealth of knowledge. And the way he answers a question in such a philosophical professor type of way, dad should have been a professor.
Totally.
But for me, when I look at this question, because I created the question, but how has dad influenced or shaped your life? So I'm going to try and say it without getting super emotional. So growing up in an Indian family, my dad had, of course, 2 daughters and then a son. One thing is, I know that there was a big difference between the parenting style between us and Alvin. But one thing that still resonates with me is that my dad never let us feel that we were not capable of doing or accomplish anything. And that is what I think the dreamer personality that he has is that I've got that. Rose has that. I think Alvin Alvin has that, is that being a young Indian girl, he never said that I couldn't do anything I put my mind to. He did, although, say that I couldn't go and be a lawyer because I think he thought I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer when I really wanted to be a human rights lawyer. And that was a fatherly instinct, like you're going to protect, like don't represent bad guys. But other than that, he never stopped me from thinking out loud, being out loud, and just trying to go and challenge the status quo. When I was really young, I started doing pageants. I started, winning essay writing competitions. And Dad never, ever once stopped us or stopped me and said, why are you doing that? Or, like girls or women shouldn't be doing stuff like that. For having an Indian father and raising his children during that time in the 80s and 90s, Dad was very forward thinking. And I think that is why now, I mean, I don't think we're a little late to the party, but we got our confidence now, hence why we've started the podcast. But I just wish if I still had the belief in me, we would have started this podcast much sooner. But I always remember that Dad made me believe in myself that I could do anything that I put my mind to. And it didn't matter. There was no discrimination between a male job or a female job or gender roles. It was like, just go do it.
Yep.
That's what I remember.
Yep.
That's how he's influenced me now, that I don't see gender. I just see, hey, who's the best person at the job to do it? That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about lessons. Have we learned any valuable lessons that have stuck with us?
Oh God, we've got a lot. I think one of the biggest things is integrity, right? Like Al said earlier, Dad was somebody of integrity, and he really honed that into us, reminding us that that's how his father was, and that he really prided himself on that. And I think when he would tell us these lessons, we were young, it didn't really apply or make a lot of sense to me. But now that I'm at this age, that I'm like, holy moly, we've got a world of people that don't have integrity in powerful positions. Like, you value integrity so much more today as an adult and as through life experiences. That was definitely something with lessons. And then I think from my own self, somewhere along the way when Dad bought his first video store, like how innovative Dad was then, right? He figured out, okay, Indians like to rent American films, but they also want their Indian films. And you had to go to 2 different video stores to get those. And then Dad created a video store in the 80s that had your American films and your Indian films all in a one-stop shop. And for our viewers, you know what he decided to name that video store? Rose Video.
We'll give you that one.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
So that,
let's give it to
the world's loudest clap.
Yeah.
So that was really neat. That lesson of Dad just being really innovative and thinking outside of the box at that young age. It did something to me because I always remind that image always comes to me when we're walking to that store and I see my name up there, Rose Video, in big writing. And it reminds you that even when people tell me I can't do something or they try to break me down or whatnot, I remind myself to keep that image in my mind, in my subconscious. Anytime I need that available, it's there.
I used to work at Rose Video when I was 7 years old. And fun fact, a couple weeks ago, I was carpooling in with my girlfriends and we took a different route to get into work. And so that complex has changed a lot. But that corner where Dad had the shop, that shop is still there, but it's a different shop now.
Wow.
Next to Shoppers. Yeah, it was such a nostalgia moment. I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, I used to work here. That used to be called Rose Video. So yeah. What about you, Al? Any lessons? What have you learned aside from be a man of your word and Rose says integrity?
Yeah, there's a lot to go through, but I think one of the few things I learned from Dad is that education is a big factor, because for Dad to think like that too, I think he had a base foundation of being a dreamer, but when he came here and he got his education and he went to school with like other Caucasian people, it opened up his eyes to just think differently, like it laid a foundation. And that, after seeing Dad as we got older, is when I realized, I see why you have to go get education, because it forces you to open up your mind and just think differently. And if you don't go that route, you're just like humans, like we start thinking like we know everything and our egos start taking over and we're not actually thinking with logic anymore. If you ever see Dad, you ask a question, doesn't matter how upset he is, whatever the question is, he will give it to you in a logical answer. And or if he did give it to you in like not the best way, he'll probably come back and say, oh, that wasn't my best answer, but this is how it should be. Dad's very like a methodical. He lays things out properly. And I think that's where I got my technical ability from and how I look at things, because growing up, I always found that Dad was always like the forefront of technology, whatever was coming out.
Right.
Like when Dad was like one of the first people to have those those camcorders and that kind of back in the 90s, that was like $1,000, $2,000 type of piece of equipment. Always stayed on top of the trending things. We were the first ones to have a computer.
Yep.
And then that's how I actually learned how to fix a
Sega,
computer.
yep.
Like I learned how to fix a computer because I would download so much like MP3 music, sometimes some porn, and it would be like wrong files. You get a virus, and then after a while, Dad like, I'm not gonna keep paying to fix this computer. Why does this keep happening? We just bought this computer 6 months ago. How are you getting viruses? And then after a while, I was like, okay, the next time this happens, because I know it will happen thanks to Napster, I was like, I need to figure out how to fix this. And that went down the rabbit hole. Like, okay, how do I fix my own computer once I jack it up? And that's when I found out that, I don't need to take it to somebody. I can do it myself. And we had Yahoo News with barely any type of information on there. I would take like bits of information and just try to play with it. I would say, computer's already broken now. I was like, can't get any worse than it is right now. And I think it was his mindset like that got me thinking on that route of like, how could I do it myself? So Dad's always been very technical. I learned so many things from Dad, and I just feel like he's like a wealth of knowledge and always a go-to when you need the right answer, not the answer that you want to hear, the correct answer.
Yeah. I agree with that, with both of you. For me, I have learned from Dad to be logical, not to try and get not to be too emotional based, considering we're women and we have hormones. So I always like to do things very in a methodical, logical, like in a matter of fact kind of way. I have learned the term, rare sense from Dad, because we are going to be doing an episode, because I think common sense is gone. It's gone. And Dad likes to call it rare sense. So I've learned that. And Dad is a stickler for bad grammar and spelling mistakes. And I have that DNA. I have the perfectionist. Yes, I have that DNA. So I'm always harping on these two when we're working on content, like the spelling's off, the grammar's off. This is driving me nuts. So that professor mentality lives alive and well in me because of my dad. So thank you, Dad, for that, for being that way. Now, let's get to, I think I've got one or two more questions as we celebrate our dad and we get to, just closing this episode. I want to say to both of you, I want to ask you both, was there a time when Dad gave any sort of advice or support and it made a significant difference or impact in your life?
Oh, wow.
I have one.
Go, start.
Should I go first?
Yeah.
What you both think? Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you this one here. So those of you that have been listening to the podcast, and you know by now, I'm divorced, Rose is divorced, this smart fella has not gotten married yet. But for me, when you get married, you don't get married with the intent that you're going to get divorced. That's not the intention. And I was married for over a decade. But when the day that I got divorced, or the day that the paperwork came in the mail for me, I happened to be at my parents' house. The mail came there, and I remember opening up. And even though you already know that the relationship's over, but I'll tell you something right now. And for those of you that have gone through divorce, when that paper comes, and this is not for when you've been married second or third time, because I know some people have, it's the first time. And that you open that piece of paper and it says certificate of divorce. That hits you like a sucker punch, and nothing can prepare you for that moment, because in that moment, it's like the demise of a relationship. It's the demise of family connections. It's the demise of what you knew for so long. And in that moment altogether, you feel like a failure. Yeah. Everything is wrapped up into one, and you're just like, what do I do? Because you don't obviously have a partner in that moment, and you don't even want to think that far. You're just processing through the emotions of what do I do now? This is all I know. And I remember I got emotional and I cried, and then Dad looked at me and I just said, Dad, it's over. And the mom and dad are not huggers by any means. They're getting better. My dad gave me, I don't want to cry. Dad gave me the biggest hug. And he said, you're my smart girl. I don't want to cry. And he goes, you're going to be okay. This is the end of one chapter of your life. It's the beginning of something else. And I don't think my dad realized in that moment what he did for me and how profound that moment was. It still impacted my life, that I'm going to be okay, because I know that I've done episodes where I do speak about when you get divorced and you go back out and everybody wants to set you up. Everyone wants to know if you have someone, but no one really takes the time to say, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? But in that moment, I don't think Dad said it afterwards because he knows that I'm rock solid and tough. But in that moment, he said exactly what a daughter needed to hear. And for me, that just I'm going to be okay. Like, just dust it off. And he's like, it's okay to cry. You're going to be okay. You're my big girl. And, and just those words alone was so monumental that my father at that time had the intellect and to be soft and to know exactly what to say to his daughter. So for me, that was when I needed my dad, and he was there for me.
Yeah. Great story. Great story. I love that.
I try not to say, see, this card is right. Even though I said I'm not emotional, I got emotional. It's the hormones. It's perimenopause.
And you communicated your emotions.
Yes. Damn it.
You did a good job.
Yeah,
You did a great job.
And like Al says, I'm trying to wrap up my stories and be a better storyteller. So there you go. Over to you, Rose.
Okay. I think the lesson that recently happened, which I think Dad now is starting to be like, he wants to kind of, I think a part of what he didn't say to me, but I needed to hear this. I really needed him to tell me at a time where I went through a divorce more recently than Ange. But I think Dad realized that I was always ambitious, but something was always holding me back. Either the maybe the subconscious programming from some of the teachers, things that happened in my life, partners, was always holding me back. And so this time around, he was like, I see something in you that's different. You're ignited. And I just want you to be prepared and be aware that if you enter in a relationship, sometimes people, they're not going to support your dreams and your ambitions. So just be really, really conscious and be just aware that, if you're going to go down this path that I think you're capable of going, you may have to do this alone for a little while. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I needed to hear that. I needed to know that there are some goals that I really want to reach in my life. And I don't want anyone to hold me back from reaching those goals or hold me back from being the dreamer that I am. And I've entered relationships with people that I felt like weren't as ambitious or didn't want to see me do as well. And that is something that kind of makes me nervous at times. But just having my dad say to me, like, just, you can have it. You just can't have it all at the same time. And so pick what you want right now and then work towards that.
That's great advice.
I was really happy with that.
I think I mentioned something like that to you too. It's all timing.
It's all timing.
Because sometimes some relationships are distractions. At the wrong time. Everything comes with synchronicity. Yep. It all lines up for you. But that's great advice from Dad. Elle, over to you.
I think from Dad, what I've learned is that it's okay to show compassion. And what I've learned from Dad, seeing him, is that he's actually like a good human being. We've seen a lot of people in our lifetime, and there'll be some people where you're like, I'm not proud to know this person, or I'm not proud to be related to this person. I can actually say, I'm proud to say that's my dad, because even everybody in the family, a lot of people always go to him for advice. You'll see, like, at a party, he's in there having a conversation with somebody, and there's like a group of people hanging around listening, and there's like one by one, he's like giving advice to people, and I'm just like, yep, that's Dad. I think for me, because I was the boy and I was also the youngest, given when they had me, they probably were a little more tired. So they had a little bit less like fight to say, I'm going to like put it. Cause I also had the fight in me that I was like, okay, well, if you guys are I'll just argue back type of thing. Not argue, but like, okay, if you tell me no, I'm probably going to say like, okay, sure. And I'll do it anyway. Like they would say, you have to go to bed by 11. What I would do is I would go sit in the hallway just enough where I could see the TV. Wow. And I'd watch TV there. And sometimes I'd fall asleep watching the TV, and they'd be like, hey, this guy didn't go to sleep. Little things. And then you get away with things like that.
Right.
But what I've learned really from Dad was that, like, he's a good human being, and it's okay to show compassion. Like, you don't need, like, growing up where in Surrey, it's always like you hang out with the boys, and they're always like, you don't show, like, you don't cry, you don't do none of that kind of stuff. You got to be hard, you got to be tough. And with Dad, it was like, yeah, you can be all that, but it's okay to like cry. It's okay to go through these emotions. So I think when I was not doing too well health wise, that's when Dad kind of took it easy on me. But he also says like, he's like, this life is up to you of what you want to make it. It's like, like we can only give you so much advice. We can only force you to do so many things, but it's like you have to want to do it for yourself. So I remember when I was going to school or something, I didn't want to go back the second year because I think I failed my first year and I had to go back again. And he was like, if you want to be a failure, he's like, this is what you're going to be left with. But he's like, if you want to like put that aside and saying that's okay, I'll pick myself up and I'll go do it again. He's like, we're going to pay for it again if you want to go. But he's like, you kind of got an idea of what it's going to be like. You got to step your game up and you got to go through it. So like things like that is what kind of like I learned a lot to like, I got to go do this for myself. Like for me, it was like, I got to do it for myself, but I'm also going to do it to prove to my parents, like, look, I can do this. Like, look what I can do. So I've learned a lot from that. There's just like, I feel like this is only like the tip of the iceberg of things that you can talk about. Things I can't go into like these long stories of what Dad has taught me and continues to like teach me.
I do want to get you, Al, to talk about and share this story. And we do know, listen, to our listeners, this episode is going to go a little bit longer, and I think rightfully so. We are doing a tribute to our dad and to our father, but we also know that the attention span for listeners, it's like at the 30-minute mark. So just bear with us, because there's a couple things that I want to share here, and I want you to understand our dad, and hopefully it'll help with your perspective if those of you that are fathers. And we're going to get to the final segment, which is our dad is a dreamer. Oh, that sounds great. Our dad is a dreamer. But Al, one thing that I've learned from dad, and I feel that we do need to speak about it, is because dads and men in general are rough and tough. You don't show your emotions. You know, it's like you keep everything bottled up. And I think dad did do that for a little while, but then there was a very sensitive side to dad. Mm-hmm. And dad actually taught you a little bit about emotions. And let's talk about the time that I bought you a dog and you had to go back and return the dog, but how that story played out, because that is a level of emotional intelligence that a father knew and tapped into his son. Let's talk about that one.
I can't remember how old I was, but I think that's when I was like going through some health stuff.
You're 16.
You were 16.
Yeah. And then you guys had,
I bought you a dog.
I kept asking for a dog for the longest time, and they would send me to Victoria to go play with my cousin's dog and then come back. And then finally you guys showed up one day with a dog. And I think it's been about a week or so, about 4 or 5 days.
This was a couple days before Christmas.
I mean, like, we had the dog for a few days, right. And like Rose would not want nothing to do with the dog. She would be like, your dog is annoying me. Get your dog away from me. The grandparents like the dog. You guys like the dog. But I also said, I was like, I go to school. Like I need help. I can't take care of this dog all by myself. So after a few days, it just seemed like
2 weeks.
No, I think
it was about a week.
No, about a week.
Yeah, about 1 week max.
Okay.
And then you guys called and said like, hey, what's the situation if we want to bring the dog back? Because we got to that point where we said like I didn't want to let the dog go, but I also like, how am I going to take care of this dog? Nobody else is helping me out. So we had got to that point where we said, okay, I think we have to take the dog back. So dad said, okay, fine. He's like, we'll go, whatever they charge us, we'll take it and we'll take the dog back. So as we were going, I'm holding Chico at the time in my lap. And this thing's like 4 pounds probably, so cute. And I'm like pretty much crying now. And I'm like, oh, I got to give this dog back. And then I'm like, okay. So I go back and the lady says, oh, you can just go put him in the barn. And this is probably like winter time where it was cold outside. They have an open barn and I walk in there and there's bins, like probably like 4x4 bins of puppies. Like it was so weird that they just had animals like this one on top of each other, a little bit of hay in there. And then I had to put the dog down. As I'm putting it down, all the other puppies just start jumping on it. Like they're just like going berserk. And I'm like sitting here crying, like, I can't leave this dog here. I'm like, first of all, this is not even like humane how they're keeping these dogs here. And then second thought was like, I can't believe my sisters came here to buy a dog from this place. This place is crazy. And I'm thinking in my head, I was like, I got to save this dog. So then I went back into the car. And
without the dog,
without the dog. And the lady was like waving to me. She's like, come and get your money. And I'm sitting in the car, I'm like crying. And I'm like, yeah, this is tough. And then dad didn't say nothing. He just looked and he's like, go back and get the dog.
That's all he said to you?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I can't remember what else he said.
Yeah, I remember him saying, go get it.
My memory's pretty shit. But he was just like, go get the dog. He's like, we'll figure it out.
Aww.
And then I went back and I was so happy I brought the dog back. And luckily I got the right one because they all looked alike. So I got that one and I just told the lady and she looked at me like, what's going on? And I was like, we're keeping the dog. Peace out.
You drove an hour and a half to
I think it was like somewhere far in Chilliwack. And
what was the moral of the story?
Yeah, so the moral of the story is like he understood like this dog means a lot more to him than he's expressing. Because also I'm a 16-year-old kid. I don't know how to express my emotions. I just know how to either cry or not cry. So we ended up coming back, and I remember coming home, and we first went to my grandparents' house because they were also kind of missing the dog. And as I'm going up, I can see my grandma crying. Everybody's crying, and they're saying, why did you guys take the dog back? We'll help out. We'll help take care of it. And then we didn't tell them we brought the dog back, and we're climbing up the stairs. And then we let him at the bottom of the stair climb up. And then all you hear is everyone freaking out. They're like, he's back, he's back. And after that, everyone helped out take care of the dog. Like, it was never on me after that.
I did, because I came back from work.
And then after 2 weeks, even Rose like, oh, I don't want to give the dog back now. And then you start taking care of it.
You know what? That was a lesson for me too, because I didn't want the dog and I didn't want any responsibility. I was working. But I remember coming home from work thinking like, oh, they went and did it. So then when I came home, I was like, Dad, where's Chico? Oh, we returned her. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, wow. And I remember just feeling like, holy shit. And then when I think Al's walking up the stairs and that was that surprise, I was like, oh, and that's when I fell in love with her.
Yeah.
You don't realize,
that dog was in our family for 17 years. And she took her last breath with us back at home with the three of us. So three of us were there when we collected her. Well, Rose and I, but we went out and she took her last breath with the three of us to make sure. Tough. And you were in the States
and I was living in the States and I don't know what happened that morning, but I remember turning to my husband, I got to go home to Canada. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I don't know why, but I need to go home today. Something's going on. And there was this intuition that I just couldn't. And I literally packed my stuff. I didn't own my pet at the time. Drove home. And that's when I came home and I go, Al, where's Chico? And Al's like, oh yeah, we didn't want to stress you or tell you, but she's been having some health issues. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, like when did you drop off to the vet? Like 3 days ago. I'm like, we need to go get her. And that was the night Al brought her home and she passed away with us.
And she was supposed to be put down the next morning, which was a Sunday and Saturday evening.
Shit.
Yeah. But but she came and she taught us so much. And I think that goes to show the resilience and the emotional intelligence that my father had at that time to know what was best for the family. And honestly, Chico taught us so much about unconditional love. And it softened us. I think it softened our entire family. And it taught my brother about love and taking care of an animal. And I always say this to a lot of to family members. I know a lot of times when you want to teach your kids responsibility, having a pet is a lot of work, but it's the greatest gift you can give your kids because they grow up to be compassionate human beings that know how to care and they just full of love, and you just learn the love, the bond of unconditional love and taking care of pets. So with that, let's get in closing. Let's quickly talk about our dad being a dreamer. Dad, we know you're a dreamer, and we just want to say thank you for being a dreamer because now your 3 kids are dreamers. And we're living a real life dream now about doing this podcast, and we're living our dream. And to everyone out there just listening, if you're listening to this episode, we just hope that our dad was able to resonate with you, because being a dreamer is the best thing that you can do for yourself. Because one thing is, you never lose hope when you dream.
And I think we have to remember too that we kind of missed one of the big things of why he's such a big dreamer is that if it wasn't for him, his family would not have come to here to Canada. He was the one that said, I need to go to Canada. I will go do that. I just need some help. Give me some money to get there. Went to school, struggled so much, and then one by one brought over his entire family here. So if you think about it, like us now, like imagine me going to a foreign country and just starting from scratch and having to bring all his family over and take care of 3 kids and family. And it's like you got to give him like a lot of props for doing that.
And I want to elaborate on that a little bit more because, when Dad was 16 years old and he's been dreaming to go to Canada for like 5 years, ever since he discovered between Canada and America, somewhere in North America. And now he's got to convince his father that, hey, I just need you to give me enough money for this flight. And there's 9 kids. This is the one kid that's come out saying, just let me go there. And he told his dad, let me go there. Let me establish myself and I will sponsor you and the whole family to come to Canada. And I promise you'll have a better life. And at that time, thank God, Baba had the wisdom to think, okay, this kid might be onto something here. He might be able to give us a better life. And our grandfather lived till he was 100. I don't think he would have lived till he was 100. And same with grandma at 90 if they were living back in Fiji. I think being here in the first world country is what allowed them to be able to live as long as they did. So kudos to Dad for
Dad was a
visionary to bring your family. I sponsor every one of them. Yeah.
Okay, in closing, what's our words of appreciation, Rose? What do you want to say to Dad?
Oh, God. Dad, I love you. You are one of my best friends. I love that we get to sit together and drink a bottle of wine and talk about life. And I love how philosophical you are. And I love how much I learn from you. Just the way you look at life, the way you're close to 70 and there's no bitterness from you. And there's no anger. There's just nothing but life is experiences one after the other. And you learn from them and you grow from them. And so I am forever grateful for the philosophical conversations that you and I have over a bottle of wine.
Al?
I gotta say, Dad, I love you for everything you've done for me, everything you've always had my back. But I think the most important thing is that you've made my life so good that I don't want to move out. So I don't know if that's good and bad.
We're all getting emotional.
I always look at it, I was like, oh yeah, I'd rather be at home with mom and dad than anywhere else, because I was like, they just let me be and do my own thing.
Yeah.
But they made my life so good that I'm like, well, do I need to move out and do this? But no, I love you, Dad. Dad's like like probably the best dad you could ever ask for. So like no changes there. I'm trying to get you away from the boozo and get you on the weed wagon. That's my one wish for you before anything happens.
Oh, that's amazing. Al, you're getting a little emotional there. We all are. It's emotional talking about dad. Well, Dad, what can I say? You are the quarterback, the real MVP. You are our Tom Brady.
Yeah.
We love you. Thank you for everything that you have taught the three of us. Mom has given us, I can say, the what is it? The homeschool, like what is it? What's that word? Like the homeschool, what is it? Like the, I'm like losing my word here. Mom has taught us how to like domesticate the house. But Dad, you taught us real life skills. You also taught us to be street smart. And with that, not everyone can say that their dad their father has taught us these things. So with that said, I love you to bits. Thank you for just always being at being my rock solid and just always saying the right thing at the right time when I need you to say there, and just always championing for your girls and of course for your son, but more so for your girls, and for teaching us that we can do anything that we want because of that. We believe in ourselves. And I want all the other fathers out there and father-like figures, please just make sure when you have kids, and especially if you have daughters, just letting your daughters know that they can amount to anything and be anything. That's just going to help carry them through life, even if they don't want to amount to anything. But just to know that your dad has your back is amazing. So with that said, Dad, I don't want to get too emotional. We want to say that we love you so much. We're so glad that you're still here, and we can't wait to see where this podcast journey takes us so we can take you on some really cool excursions and experiences because you deserve it.
Yes.
So with that said, to all the fathers out there and everyone that is a father figure out there, we want to wish you an incredible Father's Day. Hope you got spoiled. Hope you did something amazing. The tribe is going to be back next week. To our listeners and to our digital family, don't forget to check us out on all of our social channels and hit that subscribe button. We're growing together and we're going to be fierce together. So thank you so much for tuning in and allowing us into your hearts every week. We'll be back next week. A Tribe Called Dhillon podcast is signing off. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
See ya.